strumming the guitar?
No, it's going to start off with the MPC.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead and let her rip. Hi, welcome to the 13th floor. I'm Marty Duda, and today we have with us Estere. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Glad you made it up here.
Me too.
You started down at the bottom of Simon Street and worked your way up, right?
Yeah, I went to number 8, which was like this miscellaneous building that didn't exist, and I was like, I'm sure this isn't the right place.
I'm glad you found your way.
Yeah.
Because you have a new album out. It's called Archetypes, and we're going to hear a few songs from it today. And the album, I've already listened to the finished album as it's coming out, and I think it's pretty cool. And I'm getting the feeling it's a little bit different than what you've done before. So for folks who are familiar with you and don't know what to expect, how would you get them ready for this one?
I would say that it's more instrumentation based. So I used quite a lot of guitar in the album and during writing it, and that's kind of infiltrated the sound quite a lot. And I didn't so much do like the looping sampling process that I normally do.
Right.
I just wanted to try something new, really. I was ready to kind of explore new terrain, and so that's a lot of what's going on in this album. Yeah.
And speaking of new terrain, the terrain lyrically is kind of, well, Archetypes is a concept or a term associated with Carl Jung.
Yeah.
And so how much is he involved in the making of the songs here?
Well, I wanted to have like a single concept for an album. Like I wanted to make a concept album, and I wanted to make it about archetypes. Why I wanted to make it about archetypes, I don't know. It literally just came into my head one day. I was like, I'm going to make an album called Archetypes, but I didn't know what they were. And I wasn't really very familiar with Carl Jung's work.
Right.
So I just kind of had a vague idea of the definition of archetypes. And so I started to go to kind of like the, the root of the idea, and that was Carl Jung. Read a lot of his books, didn't understand the concept till probably the 5th book that I read of his.
Right.
And then once I got there, I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm really into it.
If I remember correctly, there were 4 initial archetypes that he talked about. And
Yeah.
then there's a whole bunch that have kind of been developed since then, right?
Yeah, and they're kind of like, so he talked about specific archetypes, but I feel like the idea of archetypes is it's kind of infinite.
Right.
You know, there are infinite archetypes, and the idea is that there are patterns within human existence that we all follow and share that manifest differently. And that's something that really intrigued me.
Yeah.
The idea of kind of that we all have collective things in our lives, things
that drive us to go. Yeah, it's kind of the opposite of, or it's kind of like no man is an island. It's like we're all kind of interconnected in some kind of weird,
through being human, and through being born, through having a mother and a father, through experiencing like our first feelings of fear, to like trying to get up in the morning and walk to school, it's all, and those aren't archetypes, but I feel like that idea that all humanity shares in certain patterns is cool.
So did you develop some of your own thoughts about what archetypes are from writing the songs?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say that I came up with any original archetypes, but for example, like I think that one of the archetypes I looked into was the archetype of sacrifice. Really interested in that, and how that manifests, like on the grand scheme of things, which was intense rituals where like people would be, I don't know, dismembered and eaten or whatever, to like the sacrifice of someone giving up something because they're trying to make it work with like their boyfriend or their girlfriend, And so Carl Jung, I think some of his work's amazing, and I really appreciate some of the core concepts that he came up with within his work. But I feel like he was also very inhibited by his own experience, and I'm unable to necessarily see past himself, because some of his work is quite racist,
Right.
and some of it's quite prejudiced, and it's based on ideas of archetypes that adhere to his.
Yeah, well, he was doing his thing in the mid-1800s, wasn't he? Not to defend but that's the deal. I mean, that's part of...
Yeah, but you think that if he really could completely understand his own concepts, then the stuff that he came up with wouldn't be there.
Right.
It's almost like an oxymoron or a contradiction.
Yeah.
So that's something that I also came to terms with, and then did some post-Jungian reading. So there are some Jungian psychologists who are like, yeah, Jung's great, but let's move on from some of his ideas, and which I think is important, because we can't we really have to
and especially
progress.
with the way things are going on in the world right now, especially in the States, they're kind of going through their own communal transformation about how they look at different people and things.
Absolutely.
And so that's right in there with it, I guess.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, let's face it, most musicians, when they're thinking about things to write about in songs, they're not thinking about Carl Jung and psychology. They're thinking about going down and getting beers and hanging out at the pub or something. So what drove you to go into that kind of territory?
I think that music for me is a vessel for understanding my place in the world, or just, I have a lot of questions always, and the world is deeply mysterious to me, and sometimes overwhelmingly so. And the fact that we're only given one lifetime that we know of, that we can tangibly, put a finger on, is all just very intense. And so I think music is just a way to kind of merge my feelings about that with philosophy, almost a philosophical kind of aspect. I mean, I also write songs that are about probably not going to the pub. I can't say that.
That's all right.
Maybe my relationships with other people, some of my romantic experiences. But I feel like that's a very small, kind of small part of what it is to be human.
Right.
And for me, I'm interested in exploring other things as well.
Now, one of the songs that you're going to perform for us is called Pomegranate.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about that one?
So that is a song about someone who's going on a kind of esoteric spiritual quest, but they kind of just completely leave Earth and go to Mars, and it's hard to connect to them. Right. It's about that kind of almost that kind of sense of becoming lost that happens sometimes when people go down that path but are unable to keep in touch with reality. And it's also, on a personal note, kind of about a friend that happened with, who I wasn't able to then really connect with in the same way that I used to be able to, which saddened me quite a lot. So yeah.
All right, well, let's give it a listen, and we'll come back and talk some more.
Starlight rays from its own day, waging a war against disappearance. I knew the signs of a star that was in decay. You packed bags full of reasons that you could not stay. You dissipated The few found God's hidden ley lines of words with prayer. Is there a turn I can take to visit you? You're just a babe, give it away. There's no point to getting more, for there's a higher place where there's nowhere to taste, touch, smell, see. You can't hide away from what is real. You can't hide away from what is real. We ate arrows from the heart of a pomegranate, and both our lives returned to the living planet.
All right, we're here with Estere, and we're talking about her new album called Archetypes. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Now, you co-produced this record with a gentleman by the name of Stu Jackson, who is associated with the band Massive Attack. So how did you come to work with him, and why are you working with him?
So for this album, I wanted to work with another producer. I didn't
Right.
want to do it alone. I felt like I'd maybe had not hit a wall, but I needed to learn more. And I was making these demos that sounded kind of a little bit like late 90s trip hop, you know,
Right.
like Bristolian trip hop.
Yeah.
And then I asked a friend, Lisa Fitzgibbon, who runs like songwriting workshops in the UK, if she knew anyone she thought would be good for me to collaborate with. And she was like, Stu Jackson, like it's a great fit. Like
Yep.
he's a maverick, and he'll not be opposed to going down some weird routes.
Yep.
And so yeah, I contacted Stu, and that was how it happened.
So did you record the album during lockdown or COVID land? Or
No, the
that?
album
It was
was
all before?
done. Yeah, the album. So our intention was to release it earlier
Right.
than we are now, but because of COVID, so I'm really excited to share it with people because I've been holding on to it for a while. Stu was in Wellington with me. We recorded at the Massey University Studios.
Right.
He was in Wellington with me in 2019, end of 2019, and then I went over to Bristol
Uh-huh.
for a couple of weeks.
So how did the two of you work together? What precisely did each of you do?
So he came over to Wellington and we went into the studio and we set up a rig really, and then went song by song and invited. I'd done a lot of pre-production work with other musicians, so we'd get other musicians in and we'd kind of just complete each song in a separate day, you know,
Yep.
a song a day.
Yep.
And he also played instruments on the record. He steered things in certain directions that were different to what I would have done, but cool because I learned a lot from
Right.
seeing how he worked.
Right,
He's
right.
He's produced with a lot of people.
Yep.
And production is something I'm passionate about. So I was like, this is so interesting. But I was also quite scared because I'm used to like doing most of the production, and so working with someone like that and handing over quite a lot of the driving was like,
because it could go bad. I mean, let's face it. He could come up with all these suggestions, and you just go, "That doesn't sound good to me."
Yeah.
Or, it doesn't seem like a good idea.
Yeah.
And vice versa, and
Yeah.
then it could just go down the.
Yeah, and compatibility. But I feel like because we both kind of talked before we came together, and we were familiar with each other's
Right.
sounds. Like I knew what he'd done with Massive Attack.
Right.
He'd heard some of my stuff, so he'd clearly just decided that he could work with it.
Right. Right.
And I was definitely, I was like, I can definitely work with that. Like
Very cool.
that's so cool. Like he's great, and he's a fun person to be around as well. He's quite it's not weighty. Like he keeps it
Right.
fun, and I'm very like sometimes a little stressed and
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you know,
need some-
especially as also the artist. You know,
Right.
like I feel like
Did
I
you feel
took
like
that
there was
role.
a lot riding on this album?
Creatively,
Yeah.
yeah. The approach that I took. I was like, I really want to focus on
Because it's
songwriting.
your third full-length album. So
Yeah.
at that point, people will start thinking about your catalog, your legacy, whatever it is.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you have to kind of, I guess, keep that in the back of your mind a little bit, right?
Yeah, for me, I'm just really interested in continuing to develop in whatever way that is, and maybe going back and forth. But I really enjoyed working more with acoustic instrumentation, and then maybe next album I'll go back to working more on the MPC. But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Now we're gonna hear another song. It is called. I've written it down and I can't.
Climate in Your Skull.
Climate in Your Skull. That's. It happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
I write notes down and then I can't read them.
Yeah, me too.
It's terrible. What can you tell me about the song?
This song is about mental health, pretty much, and yeah.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Let's give it a listen.
You don't look right anymore. You only see what's left at the end of every storm. We stare straight into the sun. Oh, I wanna tell you that you're not alone.
All right, we're back here with Estere. We got one more song to hear and some more chatter to go through. So the song that we're going to hear is called Pelican, but before we talk about that, you just mentioned to me that you're going on the road, so we've heard you completely solo here. Going on the road with a band is a different kettle of fish, as they say. So how different is it for you working with a band, and who are you going to be working with?
It's great working with a band. I love it.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm working with Ben Lemmy, who is awesome. I'm working with Zoe Moon, who's also awesome, and Corey Champion, who's equally awesome.
Right,
yeah.
right.
So it's different to how I used to do things, which was mainly solo. That was also with touring a lot to do with the economics of it.
Yep.
It's much easier touring solo.
Yeah.
But
And how is it different, do you think, now that there's no international artists to kind of compete with? Is it a better thing, or do you think people are going to come out and support local acts more now?
Probably going out, because there's no international acts and people want to go out, then that will just be a natural thing, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I feel so lucky to be in New Zealand right now and to be able to say that I've got a tour coming up.
Yep.
I've got a load of family overseas in France and Germany, and yeah, I feel very blessed.
Yes. Now with the band, how is the sound of the music going to change, these songs that are on the album, since you're kind of working with other people?
I think sonically we stay quite true to the album with how we perform it.
Right.
But I'm really interested in performance, so we've got quite a lot of things going on. Me and Zoe dance.
Right.
We do choreographed dancing. For the arts festival shows that I'm doing, I wear like a fibre optic light dress.
Of course you do.
And I've actually just acquired a pixel whip.
Right.
Which is really cool. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but you should come.
I will.
Yeah.
I guarantee it.
Yeah, so I think for me the live performance is probably what's added to that.
Right. And do you think the fans who you've developed with the first two albums are going to be surprised or kind of open to hearing what you're doing now?
Yeah, I definitely think they're going to be open and surprised. I feel I've always hinted to what I'm doing now with my previous work. There's always been that in there, but I've kind of, it's been it's been more beatsy, and then maybe,
right.
And now I've gone into a more like electronic melded with folk area, which.
Hey, why not?
Yeah, exactly. Why not? Yeah, I'm really excited for people to hear and engage with it. I really want to tell stories, and I hope that there's things that resonate with people in the stories that are on Archetypes.
People like stories.
Yeah, since the beginning of time, eh?
Yeah.
It's just like they exist everywhere in every place.
Yep.
I love stories.
Okay, is there a story behind Pelican, the song that we're going to hear?
Yes, there is a big story behind Pelican. So the pelican in ancient Egyptian symbology was the symbol of sacrifice. So the pelican would stab its own heart with its beak to feed its young.
That's a sacrifice.
That's a sacrifice. And then it actually carried on to like early Christian, like there are these images of a pelican doing that in like Christian chapels and stuff like that, and so this song is about that idea of mother sacrifice, and these two young boys go out on a small boat on a river and get swept up by the tides and drown, and then their mother goes out to find them and transforms herself into a pelican so she can fly above to search for her sons. And she finds them, and they're both dead. And she stabs her heart with her beak and revives them. That's the story of
That's the story.
That's what happens in the song. Yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, that's certainly different than what you've been doing before, and should get some folks interested and get their attention. So it's fascinating. Fantastic. Well, good luck with the record. Thank you for making it.
Thanks very much.
Hopefully it'll do well and all this stuff. I don't even know what that means anymore these days.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. But I'd love to see the live show. So
Yeah.
you're going to be in Auckland, I assume, for that?
Yeah. I'm going to be performing at Auckland Arts Festival.
Oh, right.
With that for the live show, and I'm performing at Explore as well. So those are the
there's
two
plenty.
shows within this area.
Cool.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Like doing the whole of New Zealand.
Excellent.
So
Well, thanks for coming around here, singing and playing and talking.
thank you for
It's been
having me,
excellent.
Marty.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Lovely.
Here's Pelican.
They smelled their dinner fry. They smelled their dinner fry. They took their fishing beads down to the river. Prickles through their shoes, prickles through their shoes, but they always went the same way together. The little one was brave. The little one was brave, while the big one hauled the boat with no anchor. He said, brother, let's go sail. Brother, let's go sail. Mama will give us rewards when we get back to shore. Ooh. And then Mama ran to find her two young taken by the tides. Oh, my foolish little boys, cry Mama. But I know the tides will give back their lives for my own sacrifice. Oh, the pelican eye. Moonlight hit the sun. Moonlight hit the suns. Mama whispered to him across the water. Till feathers ripped her skin. Feathers ripped her skin as she assumed the form of a pelican. Ooh. And then Mama flew to find her two young taken by the tides. Oh, my foolish little boys, cry Mama. But I know the tides will give back their lives for my own sacrifice. Oh, the pelican as her wings beat the sky, she sees her sons in shallow tides, gathers them gently in their death, that stabs her